Hi everybody, I'm Lian Duan. Welcome back to my channel. I start new videos for Kubernetes security from CI/CD view. In this video, we're going to deep into Kubernetes rule-based access control and demo how to use RBAC knowledge to fix Elasticsearch deployment issue. The video topic is Kubernetes authorization modes, rule-based access control, RBAC. Kubernetes API request process. How to use RBAC in Filebeat. Filebeat is part of the ELK stack. After you complete the video, you will deep understand the RBAC of Kubernetes and have experience how to use RBAC to fix deployment issue. All videos related to Markdown and exercise YAML files are in my GitHub. The links are in below. First topic, Kubernetes authorization modes. What difference between authentication and authorization? Authentication means check are you able to log into the system. Authorization means which action and resource do you allow to access in the system. There are four main authorization modes available in the Kubernetes. Node authorization support after Kubernetes version 1.7. Node restriction control is used to implement node authorization. Node restriction control is able to control kube control access to node, endpoint, pod, service, etc. Next, authorization, attribute-based access control, RBAC. RBAC allows admin to define a set of user authorization policies into a file. The policies file has combine user attributes, resource attributes, object attributes, etc. The policies file is in Kubernetes master node. If the policies file is changed, we have to restart the API server to reload the file. And then webhook. A webhook is HTTP callback post that occurs when something happens. Webhook allows for integration with Kubernetes external authorsness. Next, role-based access control. RBAC. Since RBAC is the most important authorization method for both developers and admins in Kubernetes, let's look at in greater detail in following section. Role-based access control. RBAC is originally from Red Hat for OpenShift. RBAC was upstream to Kubernetes and is stable as for Kubernetes version 1.8. You should use RBAC for access control and not use RBAC. There are four key items in RBAC. We start from the resource. Resource Kubernetes resources such as pod, deployment, nodes, etc. Second is role. You see two types of roles, role and cluster role. Role is specified for naming space. The cluster role for all naming space in Kubernetes. There is no naming space attribute in cluster role. Role is used to define roles for action on resources. Action means verb in Kubernetes world. Verbs can category read-only and read-write. Third item, role bounding. Role bounding is process between role and entity. In other words, a set of actions is permitted for certain entity on the specified resources. Role use role bounding. Cluster bounding is used by cluster role. Next item, entity. Entity is a group, user, or service account. Kubernetes called entity is subject. Sometimes not obvious whether you should use a role or cluster role or role bounding, cluster role bounding. So here are a few rules you may find useful. If you want to create access a naming space to resources, such as service or pod, in a particular naming space, use a role and role bounding. If you want to use role in a couple of naming space, define cluster role and use a role bounding. If you want to create access cluster-wide resources, such as nodes or naming space resources access all naming spaces, use a cluster role with a cluster role bounding. Kubernetes defines default roles that you should consider use before you start define your own roles. How RBAC use the API call in process. Let's move to next topic. This is a Kubernetes API request process diagram. Kubernetes API request process has 5 steps. In step 1, user or pod launch API call to API server. User's client certificates is stored in the .kube/config file. Pod identity is a service account. If you do not configure service account in the pod template, Kubernetes will be attached default service account. Step 2, authentication. If your user or pod cannot pass authentication, you will see HTTP 401 unauthorized status. If user or pod pass authentication, the process moves to next step in the chain. Step 3, authorization. If the user or pod is permitted to access certain action on the certain resource, the request is passed on feature to next component in the chain. If not, you will run into HTTP 403 forbidden error. Step 4, admission controls. Admission controller is modules that intercept requests to the API server after the request authenticate and authorized. The controllers validate and mutate the request before modify the states of the object in the cluster. If any of the controller's plugins reject the request is dropped immediately and the error returned to the user or pod so that the request will not processed. Eastune use the controller's plugin to create a sidecar pod. I will create videos for Eastune. Step 5, finally, all the API requests to stored etcd. The request is a desired status in Kubernetes. You know the knowledge of the RBAC, how it can help us to fix real-world issue with their example. Let's move to next topic. How to use RBAC in Filebeat. Filebeat is part of the Elasticsearch stack. Filebeat has an auto-discovery function to collection pulse log. The auto-discovery uses API call to get namespace, pod, and node metadata information. By the way, the video has more detail about Filebeat and how to install Elasticsearch, Kibana, Logic Stash, Filebeat, and Java app on Minikube. Checking in there, Filebeat needs to retrieve the Kubernetes container image detail to filter container log. You see there is for condition formula. We want to collect the pod log, which one from the Java log generator image. And then there's a Kubernetes container log file. You're able to go to the YAML file folder to apply kubecontrol command to deploy the Elastic Stack and the Java app log generator. Without the service account attached to the Filebeat pod, you will run into below error message. So let's fix the issue. Add the service account to Filebeat pod. There is a solution. We only need the first steps to attach the service account to Filebeat pod. First step, add the service account Filebeat into namespace ELK. Because ELK stack is the namespace ELK, we can run command kubecontrol space git space ic plus namespace ELK to retrieve current service account. Second step, create the cluster role. Key item is API group. The API group is an array that contains the different API groups. If the API group value is empty string, means use core API group. If API group's value is star, that means you want to grant access for all groups within the Kubernetes API, both core API groups and named groups. So there are two commands able to verify cluster roles: kubecontrol get cluster roles and kubecontrol API resources. Kubecontrol API resources will retrieve all API resources. Third step, use cluster role binding to glue cluster role and service account. there is a collateral bounding check command. Latest step, add the service account name, Filebeat, import template. We know the process. Let us fix the issue. Go to the Filebeat YAML file and uncommon service account name Filebeat. Log into the Linux box. Go to the YAMLs folder. First, delete the Filebeat deployment resource, and then create the pod again with the service account. Next, verification. Log into my Minikube dashboard to verify the Filebeat log. Zoom out the screen. Use command window to open the Minikube dashboard. Switch to the ELK namespace. Check the pod log for Filebeat. There is no error message again related to Note. The log shows Filebeat running smoothly. All topics are completed. Today we learned 4 Kubernetes authorization modes. What is role-based access control in Kubernetes? Understand Kubernetes API request process, and run hands-on demo at the service account RBAC to Filebeat pod. Thanks you for your watch the video. I hope it was helpful, and it was. Do not forget to like it. If you want to be notified whenever a new video comes out, then subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions or something was not clear in the video, please post them in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer. Thank you, and see you in the next video.